What happens when a worker who has everything becomes a man who has nothing? What happens when a simple act of kindness, sharing a lunch with a stranger, unfolds an untold story of loss, strength, and hope? Let's dive in and see how one small, selfless act can change everything. In a small, unassuming town on the outskirts of a bustling city, there was a man named Max Wheeler. He had a quiet strength about him, someone you wouldn't notice in a crowd, but if you took the time to really look, you'd see a fire in his eyes. Max was a man who carried his emotions like a hidden weight. You'd never guess that, not from the outside at least. Max had a routine. Every morning he would arrive at the factory before dawn, put on his uniform, and get to work without a word. He'd smile at the coworkers he passed, but never stayed to chat. His was a life of simplicity now, yet that wasn't always the case. Max had grown up in a lavish house, the kind of home you see in movies. Huge lawns, expensive cars, private schools. His family had money and lots of it. His father, a successful businessman, had promised him a future filled with luxury and comfort. But that was before everything fell apart. When Max was just 23, his father passed away suddenly. What followed was nothing short of a nightmare. His father's company was under investigation. His mother's health took a turn for the worse. And worst of all, the bank froze the inheritance Max was supposed to receive. Max tried everything he could to get the money released. He hired lawyers, made phone calls, and even begged for answers. But nothing worked. The inheritance remained frozen, and his family's wealth vanished piece by piece as properties and assets were seized by the bank. Max went from living in a mansion to struggling to make ends meet. Now, 3 years later, Max was just another worker in a factory, blending in with the rest of the employees. But inside, he was a different man. Max didn't have the luxury of despair anymore. He'd learned to make do with what little he had. He wasn't bitter. He was grateful for the little things, even if they came in the form of a sandwich shared with a stranger. One afternoon, Max was sitting on a bench, quietly eating his lunch in the company break room. His sandwich was simple, just turkey and cheese, nothing special. As he took a bite, he noticed a man standing by the door. The man was wearing a tattered jacket, and his face showed the signs of someone who had been through a lot. He looked like he hadn't eaten in days. Max felt a pang of something he hadn't felt in a long time: compassion. Without a second thought, he stood up, walked over to the man, and offered him half of his sandwich. "You look hungry," Max said, his voice gentle yet firm. The man looked at him, surprised, but took the sandwich with gratitude. "You sure about this?" the stranger asked, his voice weak. Max simply nodded. "Yeah, I'm sure. I can manage." The two sat down together, eating in silence. For Max, this was a rare moment of peace, an act of kindness that reminded him there was still something good in the world, despite everything that had happened. But what Max didn't know was that the man he had shared his lunch with was about to change his life forever. Later that day, after his shift had ended, Max was called into the office by his boss, Mr. Blake Harrison. Blake was known to be tough but fair, the kind of man who kept his distance from his employees. When Max walked into the office, Blake didn't waste any time. "Max, I've been watching you," Blake said, his tone serious. "I know you've been through some hard times, and I want to be upfront with you. I'm not just a boss who runs a factory. I'm also someone who knows what it's like to lose everything. I used to have it all too, and when I saw you share your lunch with that stranger today, it reminded me of something, of a man I used to be." Max's brow furrowed. "I don't understand." Blake leaned back in his chair, his eyes distant for a moment. "You see, Max, I've been undercover for the last week, watching how everyone interacts. I'm not just a boss who sits in an office. I like to get down to the ground and see how things are really going. And when I saw what you did today, I realized something important about you. You have a heart, Max, a heart that I haven't seen in a long time." Max blinked, not quite sure where this was going. "Thanks, but I don't need sympathy." Blake smiled. "It's not sympathy, Max. It's respect. You remind me of someone I once knew, my son. And just like that, I think it's time I share a little truth with you." Max's mind raced. What was Blake talking about? Blake stood up, walked over to the window, and paused. Max, your father's company? I know what happened. I was the one who bought it, the one who froze your inheritance. But not because I wanted to take everything from you. I did it because I knew your father was trying to hide something from you, and I wanted to protect you. Max's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Protect me from what? Blake turned to face him, his face serious. Your father didn't just build his fortune through hard work. He made some deals with the wrong people, deals that put your family in danger. I couldn't let you inherit that. I couldn't let you be a part of it. So I froze everything and kept it from you until I could find a way to protect you. But I didn't know how to tell you until today. Max sat down, the weight of Blake's words crashing into him like a wave. All these years he'd been fighting to get back what was rightfully his, never knowing the truth. Blake's voice softened. You've been through hell, Max, but the man you are today, compassionate, strong, kind, that's what your father would have wanted for you. And now, I'm going to make it right. I'll release your inheritance. Max stood up, his hands trembling. You mean, I get it back? Blake nodded. You deserve it. But more than that, you deserve to know the truth. Your father made mistakes, but you don't have to repeat them. I see the man you've become, and I want to help you rebuild your life on your own terms. Max was speechless. The years of pain, frustration, and confusion seemed to melt away in that moment. The truth, no matter how painful, had set him free. As Max walked out of the office that day, he felt a weight lift off his shoulders. But there was something else, something even more profound. It wasn't the money, it wasn't the inheritance. It was the realization that he had become a better person, not because of what he had, but because of what he chose to give away. Max Wheeler, the man who had nothing, was now on the path to having everything, everything that truly mattered. And it all started with a simple act of kindness. And so, dear listener, sometimes the smallest of gestures, like sharing your lunch with a stranger, can lead to the biggest revelations. Max Wheeler's story is a reminder that no matter how much we lose, there's always a chance to rebuild, to heal, and to find the truth we've been seeking all along. That's the story, friends. I hope you enjoyed it. It was a pleasure sharing it with you all. Don't forget to comment below and let me know where you're watching from. It's always fun to see the global reach of these stories. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button for more amazing stories, tips, and tricks. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye. If you'd like to show some extra love, tap the 3 dots near the share button and send a super thanks.